Ask yourself this question. If I was robbed of everything that I am doing professionally right now, that really fulfills me, like my assumption is you love what you're doing, will I still be okay? And would I be okay finding something else to love?
Hey, I'm Joe Fier, and welcome to the Hustle and Flowchart podcast. This is where we talk all about building businesses so they give you the freedom and fuel for your life. I'm not here to help you build $1 billion business, but I am here to help you create a business with systems that work for you so you can make more money than you need just by working part-time. You know, I was a chronic hustle mode kind of guy, and I want to share my experiences and mentors I've met along the way to help you reframe things to be the most effective as an entrepreneur. I wish I had this guidance and insight when I was younger, so that's what I'm doing here for you. Please share and enjoy. Krimitsos has organized and created over 2,000 different types of events, Podfest being one of them. That's my favorite podcasting event. I've been there many times. And he's telling us a bunch of lessons of him, a man he's 44 and dropping a lot of nuggets, and he'll get you thinking. So let's get into the episode. All right, my friend Chris, we're rolling. It's good to have you back on the show.
Joe, thanks for having me on. This is one of my favorite platforms to be on.
Appreciate it, man. And, you know, obviously it's changed throughout the years, and our mutual buddy, Matt Wolf, I'm sure he'll be listening along. You also had a Matt Wolf, you said, at your Podfest just now. But
we did, but not your Matt Wolf. Yes, it's kind of funny.
Yeah. There's a doppelganger out there, name-wise. But yeah, so, I mean, just for context, everyone listening, Chris runs Podfest and a whole bunch of other awesome events I want to learn about right along with everybody else. But you just wrapped it up, last week? 2 weeks ago or so, this last Podfest?
Yeah, I'm a week out. So I'm in what's called the recovery phase, where you work as hard, but not the way people know. It's all catch up, like billing and all this stuff that has to happen after an event. So it's a lot of work on that side of the equation.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, I just know me coming after an event, if there's something I host or even just a big party, you know, you bring a bunch of people. You said you have family in town too, so obviously that's a different layer, but there is always this, at least for me, it's almost like a hangover feeling after this big rush of excitement and dopamine and all whatever is going on inside us. Do you kind of experience a feeling like that after an event like this?
Yeah, usually like an event like Podfest, because it's a 4-day event, I'll have the adrenaline will go for 48 hours even after the event. And then I'll start breaking down, like, you know, the crash is pretty epic and you want to be very careful of how you come back out of it, because it's very easy to commit and do more work. You have to leave afternoons for naps. I'm only speaking personally for me. I'll leave an afternoon or two for naps, so I don't schedule anything. So if I do take a nap, I don't want to feel guilty that my body needs to recover. So that's something that you learn over the years. We used to go on vacation right after, and that's not the right thing either, because that's an activity that requires a lot of focus. And just for the next 2 weeks after an event like that, it's cleaning up, and whenever possible, naps, walks, thinking about what went well, being grateful for what it was, and then you have to plan your next steps for the next season.
Yeah, so do you have kind of like a rundown, a routine that you just always go into after an event that you've just kind of solidified over the years?
It's changed. Like I said, we used to do vacation right after, which wasn't the right thing after doing that a couple of years. We've tried different things. The routine that I just mentioned is the one I find that works the best, which is don't overload the schedule, have everything off, because you're dealing with your core team, handling any issues that occurred from the event. So like I've done a lot of small events. When you start doing an event that's well over 1,500 people plus, what that does, that's like having 100 small events in one event. So whatever would happen in 1 year happens in one event now. So there's a lot of dynamics and challenges that you don't even see coming that happens after. The best flow for my well-being is, one, don't read any feedback till 2 weeks after. So I try not to, we just read the feedback today, we started, and it's a week after. When you feel you're ready, right after the event, just take care of all the small things that you need to take care of and make sure to take care of yourself. And then I spend a lot of times, my 2 girls are everything, and my wife, my family's everything. So for me, family time is a really great way to reflect on what I'm grateful for. And Katie knows, like, if I go to sleep early or late, my habits are a little off till I adjust back to normal.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier guilt, like not having guilt around all these things like taking a nap in midday or whatever it is. Is that something that's kind of hit you in the past, like kind of this feeling of guilt, like if you feel like you're not working hard enough, maybe after an event like this?
Yes. Guilt was a big emotion that I had to deal with. Also, guilt that You're not pulling your weight with your spouse in the family. So it's actually a family decision. So Katie knows that the 2 weeks before Podfest, I'm not available for a lot of small things that I normally am available. And then the immediate week to 10 days after, I'm also not available. So that way she knows that I'll start going back to a normal routine, maybe 7 days to 2 weeks after. So it's actually a family planning decision because it also impacts another person and 2 little people. And we have pets, like it affects all that.
Yeah.
So we've been able to, because an event every year gets hectic as you get closer to the event because all these things happen. It's part of an event, just things evolve as you get closer. So then once it's done, coming off that high and getting back to equalization takes work. That's what I would tell you. The first week is like, don't plan doing anything other than small follow-ups with your team and naps. And then week 2 is when you start getting back into your normal cycle of reflecting, getting the feedback. And then like I now I'm starting to take my kids back to school in the morning. I do a lot of picking up and dropping off. I haven't done that in 2 or 3 weeks now. I'm back to this week. I start that cycle again.
Nice. That's a good feeling, man. When you get into that cycle, that routine, and obviously the little ones appreciate that. They want you around anyway. Might be some resistance there for a while. At least that's what I've experienced with mine.
What, Miss Mommy?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, it's like mommy phase, man. Like, I don't know.
That's always.
I've
when
got a
you say that, I
3-year-old,
know what
so.
that sounds like. Oh yeah. No. I'll have sometimes. I want mommy to pick me up, not you, Dad.
I hear that all the time. But she does like the surprises sometimes when I pop in there.
Yes, Dad is always good. We have daddy donut dates.
Exactly. I was gonna say, come with a cake pop or something. That's her advice.
Dad's no, yeah.
So what? Is there does anything surprise you after holding events like this? Because you've held 2,000, a variety of sizes of events online and offline. But anything specific pop up on this last Podfest that you learned?
What I learned is as Podfest gets bigger, more things out of my control happen that can be more riskier to the brand. Because think about it's a very weird business to be in, the event business. There's not a lot of people in this business for a lot of obvious reasons. So as my brand gets bigger, as Podfest itself gets bigger, I don't want it known as Chris's event. I really want it to be Podfest, stand on its own, because it takes an entire group of people to put it on. But I also realize when you have 1,500, 2,000 people and they're communicating on the app, there's things that happen that are out of my control that I have to catch. And you just can't catch things quick enough. So it becomes riskier in some ways. So it's just you have to detach yourself from potential catastrophes because they happen and be okay with it. Because what I learned earlier on, I know you and I were talking a little bit about life balance prior to. So I was really unbalanced in a good way. I loved what I was doing, and I was doing all these events, like hundreds a year locally. And in my late 30s, I had to start taking blood pressure pills because of the pressure that had built up from seeing what's wrong at every event. In other words, I didn't appreciate what was good about the event, and I only would see what was bad about the event, which is a perfectionistic trait.
Yep.
Because of that, I've been on, and I'm still, and I'm hoping, but I'm doing things to get off of a very low dose, but still, that blood pressure was built from the intensity and the stress of constantly doing events and not being grateful for what was, which I was grateful, but I would say I was more perfectionist at what was missing constantly because you want to get better, right? So what I would say to you, Joe, is in this iteration of Chris, 4.4, right? In my 4th decade of life, 44 years old or young, how you want to look at it. I appreciate what is. I'm conscious that things are getting, as your brand gets bigger, there's more risks are going to happen. I'm at peace with it. And the only thing I can do is work towards next year to smooth out everything and be okay and be grateful for what is. So I'm at the point now with these big events, I already know what needs to be fixed. I can't dwell on what didn't go well. And our event, this was the highest feedback we've had of an event now. It's our 9th Podfest. Yeah. But that's not the reason why I like doing events is, yes, bringing people together, but I also like executing well. So that side I have to quiet down. So I'll tell you how it would really play havoc in my life when I was younger.
Please.
I would go to other people's events and I would have that critic of mine turned on and I would see everything wrong with their events. And I'd be like, don't they see they could fix this, 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 this. And then I remember someone a lot older, wiser as well, said, well, how's that serving you? And I go, what do you mean? They go, you can't enjoy the event if you're looking at what's wrong. I go, yeah, that's a great point. So now when I go to other events, I enjoy every moment. It's an event I'm not putting on. I'm not in charge. No one's asking me to critique their event. And I have a better quality of life by being present to what is and not sitting there focusing on what isn't. And what I look at when I go to other events now is, what are they doing right that I could implement? I don't even, on the downside, it's just like me. It's like they'll fix it when they can. Maybe they just started their event and they haven't learned a lot of the things that they could fix, and they'll learn along the way like all of us. I look at things differently. Now I don't look at what's wrong. I just look at like, oh, this is a great event. I'm going to have a good time. These people invited me here. I might have bought a ticket, but I'm going to have a really good time. So what? It took me an extra 5 minutes to get my registration badge. Or so what? The food was cold. I met great people. And then there's always, when you have newer events, there's always something that they're trying that someone more seasoned wouldn't try. So I learn a lot of great things. I'm like, wow, I should do that or try that. So that's kind of how I look at life. And it makes my well-being much better. And it just makes me a happier, more well-adjusted person around my friends and my family, which I think is really important in this phase of life. I don't like comparing myself to others anymore. And when I catch myself doing it, I stop it immediately because I'm very happy with what I do. Comparison, I think, kills a lot of the joys of life for a lot of people. And I don't want that to rob me of my joy of what I love doing.
And epic answer, and thanks for sharing. And I share so much of that. I feel like most people, entrepreneurs, do, because we have that perfectionist stride, that feeling that we should get greater and greater and always improve, but it takes us out of the present moment, out of appreciation of the value we're already bringing, because I feel like, when I get too much caught up in the brain, it stops me from action right now. And even if that action's taking a nap, self-care, whatever the heck needs to get done, or just grinding out some more stuff, whatever it might be, but not dwelling on what could have been or something like that. Yeah. Has that been like in the last recent years or so that you've had this shift? Like you mentioned, you're 44 now. I know, like, a lot of us are going through changes right around that 40-ish area, like some pretty big pivots in life, kids, obviously, relationships. Was that kind of a recent pivot?
I was always conscious that, like, you don't live forever, but as you go into your 40s, I can only speak for myself, you've lived, like, when you look back, let's say you're 30, you look back and you're 20, you're like, oh, that's 10 years ago. When you're 40, you start looking at something you did at 16, you're like, oh, that was, 24 or 30 years ago, right? So you start realizing, like, whoa, I don't know how much runway is in front of me, but I know that you're either at the midway point or over the midway point. It makes you think like, okay, well, what do you want to get out of the moments that you have left, and how many of them do you really have left anyways? So you might as well be happy as you're experiencing them. So the reason why I do events is I love having moments with friends and loved ones. So I'm already very conscious of that in general. But I would say to you, Joe, I look at my daughters and I was like, I want them to have a father that's present and happy, and that is present to what's going on for them. And events are very stressful. So I also have to find a lot of peace in what I do, knowing that there's a lot of things out of my control, outside of what I have control over. So there's all these things that play into it. So yeah, I'm looking at life now as like, I wouldn't say I'm monetarily driven. Like I have a number and happy with it. I'm not looking to take over the world anymore. Maybe when I was 20s, I would tell you, up to my 30s, I'm taking over the world. I'm at the point now where I want a nice balance. I can't work around the clock because I want to go home to see my girls. It's probably my highlight of my day. So I have a limited amount of hours that I'm willing to work because I choose family after that. So I have to really evaluate my decisions very carefully, how I do everything. So yeah, I would say I look at things very differently than I did even 2-3 years ago. COVID was a wake-up call because we got to spend a lot of time together.
Yeah.
And now as we're coming out of that, I'm evaluating all my time because it's away from the family if I'm traveling, how I look at it. So I would say, and the events, the last 2 events I just did are the most stressful in-person events I've ever done my whole career.
Really?
Yeah, because you're layering it with...
And was there another one too?
No, we did Podfest last year and Podfest this year. Those 2 events are the most stressful. And the reason is a lot of people aren't coming out like they once were. Habits have changed. And the inflation in the hotel expenses have doubled. So it just created a lot of friction points. I would say this past event, we figured it out, the model, and it was born out of the pain of the last event. So I'm very stoic about, like, I think the future's bright. But if anything happens out of my control, let's say another pandemic, I don't know, something happens, and now there is no Podfest, I'm okay with that. Even though I want Podfest to last forever, I have to find peace because I don't want to tie my ego in something. If it doesn't happen, and my whole business model just evaporates, I want to be okay with what is and then just move on. Because at the end of the day, my kids and my family take precedent over an event or a business, even though I want to be very clear, this better than anyone. I love what I do. I love Podfest. But I've had to ask myself some hard questions like, what if a pandemic wipes out what you do? What if it's all virtual? like I'll do the virtual, but love the in-person. So like you have to be okay with these. You ask yourselves these questions like, well, what do I do if everything I have is wiped out? How do I continue? And the answer is I might find it hard, but I'll be okay.
That's stoic, man. And yeah, it's always thinking about the finite aspect of things, ourselves, but also maybe an event that's some external thing can wipe out. Government, or not government, but like you said, inflation of all the costs.
Well, I'm cost basis. We have people in our space that have been canceled from what they've said. Like there's people that are getting actively canceled. So if you think about it, like what if people just get on your case and you said something that you didn't think was bad, maybe other people viewed it as bad, and now you don't have a living anymore. Like that happened. There's a lot of weird things that are happening. I'm not talking, people think about controversial things. I have a friend that talks about food and natural remedies to food, and their whole email subscriber got canceled on them. There's these weird things you have to ask yourself, are you okay with not having this? Can you move on and have something else that will fulfill you? And these are questions that you have to really think about it, because anything could happen. And I think we're living in a world like, what if World War III breaks out tomorrow? Are you okay? At the end of the day, I know that I have a really great group of friends and family, and I'm hoping that counts for something.
Yeah, man. So there's a lot of questions. I guess I want to go to the fact that you have an awesome wife, Katie, and I got to shout her out. And she's going to come on this podcast pretty soon because she's blowing up her own, side of podcasting with the Women's Meditation Network and like just all these shows. And it's wild. I was looking at her, like 8 or 10 different podcasts.
I think she's up to 10 now, but it changes every month. Yeah.
Right. And I remember when she was kind of starting out. It wasn't that long ago. But the fact is, and we'll talk about her maybe on her episode, but the fact that you have an entrepreneur wife, you have kids, you guys are both at it. I won't say full time, but obviously full focus on the business respectively. Like I just recorded a couple episodes with my wife, Heather, and talked about copreneurship and like just the fact that, here's a couple that maybe are in the same business or other businesses, but they still it's like navigating life between a relationship personally and keeping that fire alive, but also this balance of also running a company or at least supporting them in their company and endeavors. Kind of curious of your thoughts of how you guys navigate that, or any things that words of wisdom or just initial thoughts that come around that topic.
So I'll share our first business together was a company called Tampa Bay Business Owners, and it was like a local chamber for the local business owners in Tampa. Katie was my operations. I was the lead. I had founded that company, and we tried to make it work, but we could not work together. So we would argue like cats and dogs over things. And what happened there was, in the relationship, we're not mature enough to know how to communicate with each other. And we decided, and at the time, Katie wanted to start her own show or brand entrepreneurship journey. So it's time for her to go. But like you said, having the relationship of being husband and wife and then working, it complicates the roles. Now, it didn't impact our relationship. It could have, but it didn't impact our relationship. Actually got stronger outside of that, because then I was able to support her. She supported me in the ways we could. When a Podfest came about, that was more of my thing, because Katie, as you know, had her own podcast, but it was related because we're in the same space. But with Katie did a show called Biz Women Rock for 5 or 6 years. And then she stopped it. She paused it, and she decided to go into the meditation space. And she saw me consulting. I would pick up consulting gigs, especially as COVID happened. I was picking up consulting gigs because I didn't know what the future was. And she would see me having massive results with people for their shows. And she said, hey, is there any way you could consult with me and help me on my show? And I remember the conversation. I said, are you going to listen to what I have to say? Because it's very easy for husband and wives to take each other lightly. I go, as a consultant, you have to listen to what I say. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And she said, as long as you don't make me wrong. And so we made a deal. I won't make you wrong, but you have to follow the plan once we agree to the plan. And that really, we were more seasoned. We knew how to talk to each other. We had more tools, how to communicate with each other. And that literally just, between her work ethic and then my marketing knowledge, putting the two of us together, that thing just blew up. So I'm very proud of her. It's her company. She's done amazing. But I appreciate that she asked me for help, and I was able to lead the marketing of her shows. So that was a milestone moment for our relationship.
That's huge, man. Because communication. You said the key piece right there. That's the same thing with me and Heather, and it's checking myself, looking at how I present ideas and how I can support her. But a lot of objective, like there's a lot of reframing that's happened, for myself at least.
Right, I can't make Katie, in the past I'd make her wrong. Like, why did you do this?
Sure.
And now it's like, okay, well, tell me what you're thinking. You have to listen, and
Yeah.
I'm a better communicator at telling her why I think something will be good. At the end of the day, it's her business, right? So she has veto power, but I think both of us have, I don't know, Joe, it's made our relationship much richer, and I love helping, being a support to my wife because she's doing such amazing work. And then at the same time, I'm deficient in certain skills, like operationally. So she helps in Podfest, but we're working right now on hiring that out to make sure we have that done full time because as you know, her network is growing so fast. She just needs to be 110% focused on that.
That's cool, man. No, I'm always happy to hear that. And I knew she was tied into Podfest in some way. I figured she was more of the organizational because you needed to balance as well. It's like me. I mean, Heather's the same thing for myself. She's always been that way. But yeah, man.
And she is. Without Katie right now, operationally, I'd be lost. So, and we're working on training someone to help, but Katie's so strong at that. It's tough to replace something when you have like an A player, if that makes sense, and then you have to find someone else. You're like, this is not Katie, and you have to be okay with that sometimes. But I think we found an A player to help lift the weight. But it's been a great ride. I actually enjoy working with my wife personally.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing and it's fun. And then I think both of us are like visionary entrepreneurs where we like and we get lost in ideas and marketing, which we love. Mm. My wife's very balanced and operationally minded. So for someone like myself, and I don't know if I'm speaking for you, Joe, it's fun to gain the psychic benefits of their hard work by adding our, what we do well, which is, the marketing and, 100%. Outreach and stuff,
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, I'm not just to toot my own horn, but I know Heather always reminds me because she's so brilliant in what she does and executes like crazy. Like that work ethic is just out of this world as well. Very similar to Katie. One day they'll meet.
Yeah, it'd be great to get them together.
Seriously, the whole family. Yeah.
Downside of both of us being entrepreneurs is if we have a bad year or a bad couple of months, both are entrepreneurial. So this is one thing I learned from Tampa Bay business owners. If you had one person in the couple that had a steady job and one was entrepreneur, the good thing is you could kind of count on the income of the steady job. Now, obviously, the upside is if you're both, one person's doing really well and the other person's kind of doing okay, you're still okay. If you're both doing well, you're doing well. But you want to be careful if both, business take a down cycle, you just have to have some backup when times are good. So just something I've learned throughout the years when you have two entrepreneurs in a household.
Well, that makes me think about how you might be building in some insurance into your own business. Like for Podfest, you were kind of saying, who knows, another pandemic or whatever. Obviously, you've crushed the online aspect. You have Guinness Book Record Awards, 2 of them, back-to-back years. But at the same time, like, do you think of, you mentioned consulting, so this could be it as well. Still, like, I almost think of it as like now money and future money. And maybe the future is also mixed in with the now, but it's kind of like there's this blend that always still, allows a little backup just in case. But at the same time, it could help maybe fuel the building of that bigger future thing, that brand. Is that kind of a way you think about it? Because you mentioned consulting and you have events.
So what I did for consulting, I don't like ongoing consulting, so I do like a power day and I charge a premium for it. It definitely gives you peace of mind, and you're right. It's money that comes in. Like you do the consulting, you get paid. That money's in your bank. When I'm dealing with Podfest, it's like next year's event. Right. So now I'm dealing with deposits, and then when does that money come in while you're paying out payroll at the same time? So events very risky in that matter. And who knows, like Joe, what happens? Something happens next year.
Sure.
What if there's like on the weekend of Podfest, World War III breaks out? Like and
well,
like
it was COVID that broke out. I think a week after.
A week after, we got lucky. Like. Man. And everybody was okay, but it's like, so yeah, you got to look at those kind of world events. So one thing I could tell you is I know that I'll be okay even without Podfest, because when I had to hustle, I was able to figure it out. But I've been an entrepreneur since I was a small kid. So like I don't even know how to make a resume. Like I've tried and I don't want to. That being said, I don't think anything's wrong with anyone that needs the stability of a job. I completely understand it. Just for me, I like hustling and figuring things out. Luckily for us, we did siphon a lot of the goodwill of Podfest through the marketing channels for Katie's shows. Like, I use the relationships to figure out how to get my wife featured in different things. So we have that as a backup, and it feels good, but it wasn't like that always. So, and then if I have to do consulting on my own, I could do that any day of the week.
Yeah, for sure. Well, relationships, man. I mean, that's where I feel like that's what's always brought me to where I'm at now. And it's all who you know, and that's a saying that some people have some resistance to. I've definitely, like, I don't know, but I'm curious of like your thoughts, because it's always been bringing people together. Because that's where the magic's at. And you mentioned in person. I agree. Like there's just something different that happens when you're in person. I used to put some events on with Matt locally, some brewery events, bring them all together.
Oh, they were legendary. They weren't just some events. People look forward to your event at a bigger event as their
I'm quick to write
event.
off my own things, but they were,
No, I mean, I remember because I would ask around. They're like, you know, Joe and Matt? And I was like, yeah. They're like, they throw the baddest party at da-da-da, you know? So that it wasn't just an event. It was a happening. So
appreciate it.
Well, I'm sorry. What was the question?
Like bringing people together, there's that special something happens and how that pairs up to whatever can show up in the future. You know, it's like these connections and creating something of relationships. And you're just the best at that. I just see you as the perfect connector. You're always helping someone get just through whatever by a connection, a simple connection. You reach out often, you know, and you're like the other day, you reached out right before Podfest. And I was like, dude, you should be hustling and grinding. You're like, you're on my mind. You know, I had a moment to call. I feel like that gets you further. That's why you never have had to create a resume. You know, I just feel like, I don't know, are there some strategies there to your connecting and like how you can help maybe someone else that might be thinking they're maybe in their head too much and they're like, I want to go reach out to someone, or maybe there's like just to kind of build a picture of what's possible there.
I think I do it naturally. Like you mentioned before Podfest, I had a few hours. I had scheduled the whole month off to work on Podfest, which is something I learned instead of doing appointments. And in that time, I had some extra time. I was like, let me reach out on Joe, see how Joe's doing, reach out to another couple friends. I think if you could do as many introductions as you can where you're building value with people via emails, get to know you, Zoom calls, and then when you can meet them in person, you'll always be okay. Like people will always know who you are, and then it's up to you how you leverage that notoriety. But I look at life as one big party, and once it's over, all things that will count will the moments that you have with other people. So like I want really great times with people. I built a life full of really rich, deep relationships. So I don't, like you said, if I ever asked for help, I think I'd have people that would be willing to support and help me, whether it's putting it out there that I'm consulting, people would put that word out there. It just, I think it's very valuable for you to build up and honestly, for your mental well-being, it's good for you to have peers that you could talk to. Oh, yeah. And I'm very fortunate to have a very strong group of peer groups that I belong to and I talk to about what's going on.
Sweet, man. Yeah. And for, you know, speaking as men, I know it's always said that men in relationships, the later they get in their life, the less relationships they have. I feel like we're pretty damn unique in the fact that podcasters, connecting people online, not all business owners have that network and the ability to reach out to so many people that have like a connection there, you know? So.
Yeah, Joe, most people don't, like you said, if you really think about it, when you're young, if you're in college, you might have a group of friends you hang out with. Then everybody either couples up or they do their own thing. They get into corporate or entrepreneurship, whatever that journey is. So then by the time you're 40, you're lucky if you have a couple work friends, whoever you work with. And then I've heard from business owners that sold their businesses. They were captains of industry. I'm talking a lot of money, right? And their biggest complaint is they have no friends. And they said, I remember one guy said all his friendships were based on his business relationships. Well, once he sold the business, there was no reason for those people to call him. But in his mind, they were his friends. So then it became very lonely on the other side of selling that business. So I told Katie once, I was like, do you think my friends would be there if I didn't have Podfest? She goes, are you kidding me? She goes, everybody would be there. Because my friendships aren't based, even though I might have met them through Podfest, they, like you said, they're outside of that world. And I think that's why people listen to Joe Rogan or those podcasts that are 2 to 3 hours. We're filling a void of hanging out by a campfire with our friends. And technology has really filled in that void from gaming to whatever. But that used to be time where you would get together in a neighborhood with your friends, and that doesn't happen as much. So
that's a good point.
That was my New Year's resolution, by the way, was I want to travel and just spend more time with friends. That's why we did the pod tour last year. Selfishly, it wasn't just to promote Podfest. It was to meet and re-engage with people like John Largent, a lot of old friends in different parts of the country.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I forgot about the pod tour, but it's a great idea. I mean, you're like a forcing function. You're just making things happen.
It was for my well-being. I know that sounds crazy, but I was in this office for like a year, and Katie's like, you're miserable. She goes, you need to get out there and be with people. That's what keeps you going. And then when I did the pod tour, I was like, Joe, I was like, why didn't I do this sooner? And it was because we're coming out of COVID. You don't realize like you have to reestablish your habits.
Dude, it's Yeah, COVID. And I'll just tell you, last year for me, I mean, I know we chatted a couple times last year about this whole Web3 crypto pivot that Matt and I did. And I know you did some stuff over there.
I got caught in it too, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if we have enough time to catch up on that part, but I found myself very siloed in terms of like the connections in business. I'm talking business side. Not equating all of my, like these are all my friends, this is all I have kind of feeling. But I definitely felt like there was a gap there. The fact that we went to this new space, there were a couple friends that crossovered, but not that many. And I felt like I just kind of closed the door on so many relationships. And it wasn't like I ignored them, but I just didn't reach out. I didn't engage. And there was like a pit in my stomach all the time being like, that doesn't feel right. Like, I don't know. These are the people that brought me to this point. I've exchanged so much value. I've had so much fun and genuine relationships. And then coming back, and then realizing that and being like, holy shit, like, what did I do? And obviously, regret anything. I learned a lot. Could have approached it much differently. But at the same time, yeah, there's that same kind of feeling I had last year. I was stuck in an office in a lot of points, but my own doing. Yeah, I don't know. I relate to that. I think people listening can definitely relate. When you're so siloed, you just kind of feel like you can't really reach out or get feedback or have that support. However, that comes back.
During the pod tour, Joe, what I realized, because I live in Florida, so remember, we've been out for quite some time.
Yeah.
But a lot of these places, it was the first time someone did a podcast meetup in 2 or 3 years.
Whoa.
So when the people would come out, they're like, and you'd realize they haven't been out. You'd realize it as you're talking, because there's a different feel, like when that happens, and there's a different gratefulness that people have. And I realized that a lot of these cities hadn't had like a meetup in years.
Hey.
So you're like, wow, like it feels good to be the catalyst to bring people back out together with one another. So that was really good for my mental health. For me, being out with people is probably huge. Web3, what I did was I did a couple of events having some fun because, entrepreneurs, we love new things. So it was like something new. And the events were very successful. But what I learned out of that was kind of what we talked about earlier. I can't take on the world anymore. I have a limited amount of time. So Podfest is kind of in the near future here, that's what I'm doing. And I want to be the best at it. So I could do my pod tour, meet my friends, people in podcasting, in creation of shows and stuff, and be great at it. And those other events, I'll still do some consulting here and there, but I don't need them to be mine. So I've been able to pay them forward to people I could do better use of them than I can.
That excites me, man, because that's a similar realization I had coming back into this thing too. Is like, all right, what can I release? What was I holding on too tightly to? And yeah, a lot of it was just this internal drive, feeling like I need to do more. I need to take this over. I need to be there. The newest tech, they need to know me and see my voice or my face, hear my. It's like, you know what?
That was going on my head too. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I think it's common. And yeah, dude, thanks for sharing. And I'm stoked to hear that about the crypto side for you too, because I was super curious. I didn't ask you last time we chatted.
I still believe in, what Bitcoin can do for people. And unfortunately, there's some unscrupulous people, but that comes out to any brand new industry. But I love that space, but it's not my space. And I don't need to own every space. Like, I could just as happy in my space. And that's kind of one of those things, like, stop looking out, like, the grass is green where it's at. So I'm happy with what I have. And I'm going to keep working at what I have. And there's a lot of variety to be had there if you look,
So much. Yeah, you just got to be a little slower, pause, and look around. Yeah, see what you got, man. Dude, Chris, I'm stoked that I didn't even know where we were going to go, honestly. It was kind of just like, I know we can chat for ages, you and me, man. So we share so much in common.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
What do you do to relax, to find your peace? Like, how do you... When you're shutting your mind off, and I know it doesn't shut off, like, I get the ideas always come in, but what do you do for your meditation, so to speak, if we were to use that word? What is your meditative space for you?
I do a lot of stuff, but the anchor that I use is my breath. And I looked over just at my screen right here, and there's a little tab I keep open to remind me of my breathing. And it's like a breath pacer. It's like super hokey and weird, but it's literally just like this ball that goes up on a graph and then kind of goes down. And that's about 5 or 6 seconds up, breath in, hold for maybe a half second or a second, and then back down the same amount of time, and then hold again. And I've just found that that's the best thing that I can do. And to kind of like throughout podcasting is a perfect example, is to pace myself and my speed because my brain wants to go so fast, but my voice, and I'll find I'm out of breath. I'm like, I didn't breathe for like 2 minutes, feels like. So I've been meditating for a long time, but breath is definitely the thing that just like chills me out. And it helps that I just got this Apple Watch, and I've been kind of learning a lot about heart rate variability, HRV. And when we breathe in kind of this cadence, it chills our heart out, so our heart's not erratically popping up and down at different speeds. And it's all based in the breath. So that's where it's more of like a mindfulness approach is what I take. Just
that's a
becoming
great tip.
Aware. Yeah. So that's I have so many other things I could talk about, but the breath.
No,
man,
I think that's, I know when I do events, I forget to breathe. So I have to remind myself to breathe during an event or before.
For sure.
And then right now, when I have time, I like going for walks.
That's good.
Without any music, anything, I have like a walking stick, walks along the water here in Tampa, and just be alone with my thoughts.
Nice. No tech or anything. That's beautiful, man.
I'd like to say for the most part, unfortunately we do break our own rules, but if you were to ask me, like, no tech, no music even, and just sometimes ideally me talking out loud to myself, so I could hear my thoughts, and I'm able to rethink the day, look at my, like, how I think you're the same way, but if I can't get my thoughts out, like marketing stuff, sometimes I don't have to do it all, but if I could verbalize it, it's cathartic to let it out. To the point where, like,
to yourself though, right? Like,
to myself, because I used to do that with Katie. She's like, and she's an operation mind. So what is an operation? You can't do that. How are you going to implement it? I'm like, no, I just need to, like, sometimes the creative mind, I just need to let it out. Doesn't mean I'm going to do it and think about it. And
I'm
then move
identical,
on.
Man. Like, I relate so much. I have a spa or a hot tub, in the backyard on my deck, and that's typically where I'll sit at night, look at the stars, and just gibberish will come out sometimes. Right. And it's purely that. It's just to free it out of my mind. I just know if I'm stuck in my head too much, I'm going to be complacent. Things happen. That's right. Like, I get too much in my head and shit doesn't move. Like, my momentum stops. I
had the author of Guerrilla Marketing, J. Conrad Levinson. Before he died, I was a really young guy getting started. I had him speak twice, and his name was J. Conrad Levinson, phenomenal human being. He looked like Mr. Burns, if you want to, like, what he looked like. But I remember I put him up at a hotel, and I was finishing up something later on that night. I was still there. It was late. And I see the guy, and what he would do, and this guy was a phenomenal, brilliant mind. At night, he would walk and look at, like, the sky. He would go outside, look at the sky, walk, and he would pace for like 2-3 hours, like after it was like 10 or 11 p.m. till 1 a.m. Wow. And just like think and talk to himself. You could tell he's not talking out loud, but he was just like, and that's what he did every night. That was his meditation, so to speak. And I was like, here's most brilliant minds in marketing, and here he is exercising his gift by himself. So I just always found that fascinating, and I do that naturally as well. But it was cool to see that, from a guy you just brought in doing it on his own. And he didn't want to be bothered. He'd say hi, and then you could see him just back to his thoughts, thinking. Yeah, and you got to respect that space, man, and the fact that he's doing it. It's not just some strategy talked about somewhere in his books. I got to find the audio and send it to you. I think we have it in the archives.
Yeah,
it was the best guerrilla marketing lesson I've ever. I mean, the guy was just one nugget after another. He didn't even have a PowerPoint. I think he had a PowerPoint, but it was like, it was the best marketing class I've ever had was from him. And he's created, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, Die Hard batteries. He created the cowboy for the Marlboro cigarette. So the guy had created the most iconic brands. And here he was teaching it to a small group of entrepreneurs. Because at the time he got forgotten. People didn't know who he was back then. They just knew guerrilla marketing. Mm-hmm. And he was 79. It was his last couple of years of life. And I was able to revive his career, bring him into a group of marketers. And they all started doing books with him.
Oh, wow. Yeah, please, if you could find that audio.
I'll send it to you because I know you'd. And if you want to use it, I'd be more than happy. So people listen to it, see if it has any value. This was 15 years ago. So hopefully it should be spot on still to this day.
I'm sure there's some timeless nuggets, man.
100%. I remember as a kid, I was like, man, this is gold. And I was just taking notes.
Yeah, maybe there's a clip or something we could pull out here and combine it with that. And I don't know. We'll see. But
the one nugget that I repeat often, he said, I hate to admit this, but bad marketing done consistently will beat extraordinary marketing done unconsistently every day of the week. He goes, the marketplace and the consumer demands consistency which builds trust and that you'll be there. And that's why sometimes locally you'll see some brands, you're like, that's the dumbest commercial, but they're around for 10 years. Well, guess what? You know who they are and you're calling them. Yeah, yep. Consistency.
Man, that's like
even though we want to do exceptional marketing consistently, right? That's the goal. But I just remember he said, I hate to admit this, but blah, 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 blah. And he went through. That always stayed with me.
Well, it's powerful, man. And this kind of bookends the other start of our conversation is entrepreneurs being this perfectionist, always wanting to put our best craft out there. And I know for myself, and it sounds like for you, is like we can get stopped in that path of creation if we just try to get too perfect, get too locked in our minds of how, oh, this is the best strategy to do or whatever the hell, most efficient way. It's like, no, just do you, but like keep it consistent, because get out of your own way, simple decisions, if at all possible. I don't know if you're familiar with Rick Rubin in his new book. He's that epic music producer. And
I know who Rick Rubin is. I haven't listened to the book, but I watched some podcast interviews he did.
Yeah. Well, you might have heard it. It's just like his simple decision framework. It's like just boil everything down to like two things. And it shouldn't be difficult for you to decide what feels good at the moment. And then just pick that and then move on. And then do it again and then move on. I'm like, God damn it, it's that easy.
He's upset a lot of artists that he's worked with because of that decision making, but he's always made the right choice. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no.
Even for them, because it's, try and please everybody, you become a very unhappy person. But when you make the right decision in the moment constantly, and I think that's why I don't think anyone has ever produced more music than that guy. When you look at his biography, he's worked with pretty much every artist.
He crushes.
That's ever made something in the last 30 years.
Yeah, man. So, if that's a Vinny use for y'all listening. So, Chris, anything that you want to leave us with right before we wrap it up here? Obviously, go check out Podfest, and that happens, every January-ish or so?
Once a year. We don't know what time at this point with the hotels until we could get regularity again. It's what we can get.
Okay.
But it's worth it coming out whenever it happens, and that's the key. What I would leave everybody with is ask yourself this question. If I was robbed of everything that I am doing professionally right now, that really fulfills me, my assumption is you love what you're doing, will I still be okay? And would I be okay finding something else to love? And it's very Stoic and Buddhist, but I had to ask myself during COVID, what happened after, and it was the most epic event. We had this epic event. 7 days later, I didn't know if I'll ever do another in-person event for quite some time. And I had to ask myself, am I okay not doing what I've been doing? You have to ask yourself all the time, who am I? And it's yeah, it took a while, but it took be okay. I'll find something. I'll just find something else that I really enjoy. Because in life, what am I going to do? Stress myself out into a heart attack? And you see that often. People just the stress is what kills your body. So if you could alleviate stress, you'll be healthier. Obviously you want food health, but I think stress is probably right up there with poor food choices that stress out the toxins in your body. So my job is I don't want to have a stressed out body so I could be healthy and be present with my daughter. So I would just say, ask yourself that question. Are you okay if your professional title got stripped away from you, the one that you love? Are you okay with that? Or how would I be okay with that? Because if it does happen, you got to find some peace in it and don't be wrapped up in those titles.
All right. I'm leaving it at that. Go journal, go meditate, y'all. Whatever you got to do, I'm going to do the same. Chris, appreciate you, brother. Much love. And check out podfestexpo.com. That's all the fun info. Get on Chris's list, too. I feel like there's a daily email. So if you're a podcaster, you're a content creator, there's always something, a nugget that'll inspire you to create more and seek out what is that deeper thing that you're putting out there in the world. So appreciate you, brother. Do it
Thanks,
again.
Joe.
All right. That's what I got for you today. And remember, it's not all about living to work. It's all about working to live, if you need to do the work. But, work can be fun, and it should be fueling for your life. So if you enjoyed what you just heard, if you got some nuggets of wisdom that you want to share, or you're just noodling on right now, please go tell others the way that people find this show and how you can help others get their aha moments is through word of mouth. So if it is telling your friend, telling your family, send an email to your list, writing a review, or whatever it might be, everything helps. So thank you so much for listening to the Hustle and Flowchart podcast, and I will see you next time.